Birdwatching at the Loeries is the official podcast of this year's event in partnership with VMLY&R South Africa and Bizcommunity. Episode 4, Self-Disruption, with special guest Luca Gallarelli, Group CEO of TBWA South Africa, Suhana Gordhan, Independent Creative Leader, and Kabelo Moshapalo, CCO of Ogilvy, South Africa. Luca Gallarelli is CEO of TBWA South Africa. The agency, which celebrated its 40th birthday this year, calls itself the Disruption Company. We were curious to hear how they apply that philosophy to their own business, and that common industry business practices Luca believes are long overdue for a shake-up. Hi, Luca.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. And yourself?
Good, thank you.
All right, so I just want to first off start by thanking you for taking this time to actually come sit down and have a chat with us. And I think I want to start in quite a weird place and say, when you spoke at the Nedbank IMC conference a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned that as creative agencies, we should be inviting a bit of chaos into our lives. Can you explain what you actually meant by that?
Well, firstly, thank you for having me.
Yes.
Secondly, I mean, in response to your question directly, I think that, you know, as a world and as an industry, we've done a huge amount to try and make our lives easier.
Yeah.
The world is increasingly and immensely complex. And to bring comfort to ourselves, I think we do a lot to try and lock down the variables in our worlds, which means those things that we can't really control. What that means is we try and create certainty, actually in some areas where uncertainty is necessary. And I fundamentally believe that creative spaces and companies require a certain level of conflict, a certain level of disruption, a certain level of uncertainty in order to create the appropriate conditions to thrive.
All right. So essentially, if somebody is like so flabbergasted by the statement, where would you say they should start by inviting this chaos? How would you walk them through the process?
Well, I think the first thing is to recognize that creativity can't thrive in any environment where homogeny exists.
Okay.
Right. So if we're all, for example, if we're all agreeing with each other all of the time, you're never going to get to a different answer.
Yes.
Right. So if we're creating an environment where everyone feels comfortable and free to bring their perspective, point of view on the world, point of view on any problem or challenge to the table, which doesn't necessarily agree with yours or mine. I think we need to create environments where that is healthy and where constructive debate is healthy, where preconceived ideas of what the answer is not necessarily where we're gunning for, but we're inviting the discussion, the debate in order to acknowledge that the answer is something that is unknown. And hopefully through that engagement, through that tension, through that conflict, we'll arrive at the appropriate answer.
So, I mean, you being a CEO, right? You would think that you would want order and efficiency.
Yeah, you would. Sometimes I do.
So, are you saying that these aren't necessarily good things for creativity, though?
No, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that order and conformity are the enemies of creativity. And I think that if we engineer all of the madness, mayhem, tension out of our businesses, they will be the death knell of creativity and innovation in our industry.
All right. I like that. And I think, we're going to delve a bit deeper, and say, with more and more channels and touch points popping up all the time, each with its own quirks in some cases, algorithms, what's the key to creating well-integrated messaging?
It's a very good question. I mean, I think that, the proliferation of channels and complexity in our worlds is precisely the reason why we look to lock down some of the uncertainty that I referenced earlier, right? I think that because there are so many variables, we feel very much out of control. I think that the Rosetta Stone to any integrated campaign will always be the strength of the creative idea. And I think as an industry, we've lost, it sounds crazy to say it,
Yeah.
but I think that we've lost a little bit of sight on the power of the creative idea and understanding how that creative idea then manifests through multiple channels. I think we've tended to think that each channel requires its own interpretation of an idea, or even worse, its own idea entirely.
Yes.
I think that there's some home truths about our industry, some fundamentals which we've moved away from, which have always been what's made our industry special, magic, and potent. And if we return to those and understand that the creative ideas should sit at the heart, and how does that idea manifest over multiple channels, I think that it solves the issue of integration fundamentally.
I like that. I think it packed it out very well and touched on everything. And if anyone needs clarity, they should reach out to you, right? On the messaging.
Thank you.
So your agency celebrated its 40th birthday this year, and it has such a rich history. What's it like having the responsibility to carry on that legacy?
Look, it is a responsibility, and any agency that bears the name Hunt and Lascaris, it carries with it a weight of expectation, not only around how does an agency that was founded on the principle of being the first world-class agency out of Africa continue to push itself in order to achieve what in many respects may be almost impossible to achieve. You know, like, what does it mean to be the first world-class agency out of Africa? It's a moving feast, right? So I think for us, the 40th was an opportunity to reflect on 40 amazing years that has informed who we are as an agency, who we are as a people, who we are as a culture. To acknowledge what's brought us to where we are, but most importantly, to synthesize much of the magic that sits at the heart of each and every one of those 40 years in order to, fully appreciate what it will take in order to achieve the next 40. We're an agency that is very proud of our legacy and our history, but doesn't spend too much time reflecting on its past successes and spends a huge amount of time applying pressure to itself to understand what is it going to take to be excellent tomorrow rather than excellent yesterday.
Yeah. And you guys call yourselves the disruption company, right? So how do you actually apply that philosophy throughout the business?
Look, I mean, disruption is not only an operating system for us, but a philosophy that sits at the heart of our agency. And if we reflect a little bit on what I said just now about inviting tension into our worlds and into our ecosystems, I think disruption really is about that at its core. It's about acknowledging that the status quo is not acceptable. It's about acknowledging that what brought you here won't necessarily get you there. It is about disrupting yourself before somebody else cares to disrupt you. So we are our own biggest competition each and every day. We're never satisfied with what we've done. We've never satisfied with what today will bring. We're always looking forward. There's sort of a discontentment at the heart of everything that we do, which drives our philosophy of disruption.
No, definitely. I think it sums it up perfectly. But I think you'd be the right person to then ask that, what traditional business practices in this industry do you feel we're doing just because we've always done it that way and are long overdue for a shakeup?
Sure. I mean, that's a very, very good question. I'm going to flip that question a little bit.
Okay.
Because I think that as an industry, we are so desperate to run towards the new that very often we flip too much and run away from the core of what has made us special and unique. Right. And I think that as an industry, we've always been defined by our ability to create. And by create, I mean to create something out of nothing, something new where previously something didn't exist. And I think that very often in running towards the future, we move too fast away from some of the fundamentals of our industry, those being around our ability to attract and retain the most prodigious talent, our ability to embrace talent that many industries or organizations simply wouldn't have, or that talent simply wouldn't feel at home in. And I think that as we move to a world which demands more, what is the word I'm looking for? Accountability.
Okay.
We move away from some of the crazy variables that have always made us special. And I think that as an industry, we need to acknowledge that there are many unknowns in the world of creativity.
Yeah.
And as we move towards greater accountability, that which we cannot account for does not mean it's not accountable. It doesn't have an impact.
I think that really does sum it up, and I hope that those things are shaken up really pretty soon. And in your mind, what are the biggest threats facing advertising agencies right now?
I think that we are our own biggest threats.
Okay.
I think that agencies are very quick to run towards the new, as I said earlier, and move away from some of the fundamentals. And I think in doing so, we risk vacating the place that has always been ours to own and should be ours to own. That being environments that are homes to prodigious talent, as I said, talent that wouldn't ordinarily find a home elsewhere, where it becomes a race to the bottom towards the commoditized side of our business rather than the side of our business, which is really, fundamentally about, alchemy. I speak a lot about alchemy, the process of creating gold, by bringing two elements together. And I think that our world has always been one which has been this blend of logic and magic, so to speak. And I think that our biggest risk is forgetting that we are equally responsible for creating magic as we are about creating logic. I think the more that we default to logic, the more we leave ourselves at risk.
Yeah. And on the polar end of that question, what most excites you about the industry in South Africa right now?
What most excites me is I think that a lot of our industry has defaulted to moving towards logic, right? I think that a lot of agencies, a lot in our industry have forgotten the magic of our industry. And what keeps me excited is I've always been motivated by the unknown in our industry. I've always been excited by being a part of an industry and an agency that creates, that embraces the unknown. And I think the opportunity for agencies that double down on creativity, that double down on magic, are endless. I think that the playing field has never been more rife for the agency or business or consultancy that recognizes the power and potency of creativity, magic, and innovation.
No, that also excites me as well. So now we've got young aspiring ad people coming up, and what do they need to do to future-proof their careers in this industry?
I think they need to embrace the madness of it, right? I think they need to first and foremost, want to find a career in advertising or the creative industry because it is a vocation more than it is a career, right? It should be a calling to them.
Yeah.
Something that is a little bit deeper than wanting to have a job, a little bit deeper than wanting to earn a salary, but something that they find deep meaning in.
Yes.
And I think the ability to create, to be a part of a process that creates, is rooted and should be rooted in meaning. I think if we can continue to identify and attract individuals who are motivated by achieving sort of a more fundamental meaning, that will be a healthier industry for it.
Yeah.
I think that many, as the world, as I said, has moved towards a little bit more of the logic, we've forgotten a little bit of the magic. I think that, those that choose to Those that choose to find their vocation in advertising will find far greater fulfillment in their careers and in their lives than they would in any other industry. And that is what's magic about this industry. It really is an opportunity to feel deeply about what one does rather than go through the motions of what one does between 9 and 5.
Well, I think you summed it up quite perfectly there in capturing the magic within the chaos. I want to thank you as well for taking the time out once again, sharing your insights. This has been insightful, magical, and most importantly, I think, disruptive.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to chat.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Suhana Gordhan started as a copywriter and spent the better part of 2 decades rising through the ranks. She ultimately went on to become one of the few women chief creative officers of color in the ad business. We asked her how much room there is for wordsmiths in the age of ChatGPT and what their role might look like as AI becomes part of our creative toolkit. Hi Suhana, how are you?
Hi Marlon, it's good to be here. I've been waiting for Loeries this whole couple months, so it's really good to be here and to be fully present.
Well, I'm glad to also have you here, and I just want to thank you as well for giving us your time to sit down and speak to us.
No problem.
But before we get into advertising stuff, I must ask, you do capoeira?
Yes, Marlon, if you ask me about this topic, we're going to be here the whole day. I just warn you. It's called capoeira.
Yes.
It's Afro-Brazilian martial arts. Mm-hmm. And I've been doing it for a long time. People in the industry who know about it tease me. And they say, you do that fight dance thing. And the reason is because it's a martial arts form disguised as a dance form.
Yes.
It was started by the African slaves in Brazil. And in order to practice it, they had to disguise it as a dance form.
Oh, okay. But how did you get into that? Because I'm very curious about that.
So I stumbled upon it by accident. I was studying advertising at the AAA school.
Okay.
And I met somebody who was in the neighboring school who was doing capoeira. Mm-hmm. And he said, hey, why don't you try this thing out? And he invited me to the field the next day. And he's like, I'm going to show you some moves. Which he did, and I was hooked. And I started classes back then. It was in Edenvale in Johannesburg. And from day one, I was into this thing. It has become such a huge part of my life. Uh-huh. It's more than a hobby for me.
Oh, no. I can tell that you really do enjoy it. And I mean, it's something that nobody would have guessed just by having a glance at you, So I guess that's where we wanted to start it off. But right back to advertising. Let's start it here. What makes a good story?
Okay. So I think a good story, ultimately, with the ones who are receiving your story are humans.
Yes.
And humans want to feel something.
Yes.
They want to be moved in some way, whether that's moved to tears or hysterics of laughter, or maybe it's a kind of work that makes you puzzle or makes you think. It's provocative. I think that's ultimately what is a good story. It keeps you in from beginning to end, and you remember it. The best stories are the ones you can retell and remember for years to come.
And I mean, looking at advertising generally in South Africa right now, what score would you give the industry on its storytelling abilities?
I would say we're very good storytellers in South Africa. Yeah. I would say we're sitting at about a 7 or an 8. I'm going to give it an 8
because I have, right?
Yeah, I have a lot of confidence and faith in our industry because we hold our own on every stage, every award stage, locally and internationally. And we have a unique storytelling ability. And I think part of the reason we have that is because we have a unique culture. We have unique things that happen in our country. And so that gives us the meat and the content with which to be fed with inspiration. So, yeah.
And I mean, just to boggle it down a bit, I mean, where are we coming short and where are we getting it right?
I think where we're getting it right, especially having come off the back of just judging awards now.
Yeah.
The stories that are very unique to South Africa, that tap into a type of cultural nuance, that tell our stories, that express who we are as a people. For me, those are the most exciting ones because they're the stories only we can tell. And it's
Yes.
lovely to be able to explain to a foreign jury president that this is why this ad exists. So I'm excited by work like that. We're getting it right when we do that. I think we're not doing enough of it.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe one of the categories in advertising that we are not fully, like really thriving in is digital. I think that's still a place that we could do better in.
I think, coming off of the back of that, I mean, we're in the time of Chat GPT, right?
Yep.
How much room do you think there still is for like human wordsmiths?
I think there's plenty of room for it. I've been experimenting myself. I'm a copywriter by
Yes,
trade,
yes.
and I've been experimenting with ChatGPT. I don't know anyone who isn't.
Yeah.
I know people who have written entire speeches for family occasions using
Serious?
ChatGPT. But I think that one thing that's if you're in my instance where you're a writer,
Yes.
it comes short. It really does fall short, and in a way that makes me feel good because my role is still then important. And where it falls short is in flair and a certain element that a human can bring to something, which is ingenuity, which is a pairing of words in a certain clever way.
Yes.
Whereas I find ChatGPT a bit functional now. What is good about it though is it's a good like a leg up if you need a little bit of inspiration, if you need a starting point.
Yes.
Sometimes it's good to explore, but where it lacks for me is that deep human insight. And obviously it doesn't speak our 11 languages, so people who write in the vernacular languages are gonna have way more advantage.
And I think, that covers the basis of the role that it currently plays in the future of our industry as a creative toolkit, right?
Yeah.
Like, you think it's going to be a part of our future in this industry?
I think it will be part of our future, more so than some fads or some things that we've experienced, like, for example, NFTs. There's certain things that are still relevant in our culture, in our world. But like, for example, in South Africa, the technology might not fly as much as it would in other places.
Yes.
AI has a role to play, and I think that the way to succeed with it is to befriend it. To understand it, to treat it as an ally,
Yes.
Because I think there's a role it has to play. But I 100% believe that it would never fully replace the human element, the human creativity. There's a mystery to human creativity that I don't think it can tap into.
Yes, AI cannot just tap into
Yeah.
currently. I mean, with the advances though in tech, we're seeing, particularly in the generative AI space, where would you suggest? Sorry, let me rephrase that. Right, with the advances in tech that we're seeing, particularly in the generative AI space, where would you suggest young creatives upskill and focus their studies to set them up for successful careers in this industry?
I think it's a good time to explore and to expose yourself to as much of AI technology as you can. Obviously, one of the ones that I think really is particularly relevant to our industry is Midjourney.
Yes.
Unfortunately, you do have to pay some kind of fee if you really want to get advanced in it. So I would say to young people, speak to your schools, speak to your agencies to see if they can invest in that. Obviously, we've spoken about ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And then what I found also is that LinkedIn is a great platform within which to spot AI specialists. And they're always updating us on knowledge. They're updating us on the way AI has already advanced. So it's good to find the AI experts, follow them, and see what they're talking about.
No, definitely. And I mean, now we're in the 45th week of the Loeries. What is something that's special that stands out for you about the Loeries, in particularly to your career?
The Loeries holds a very special place in my heart because, it's the place that the entire industry gets to congregate and meet.
Yes.
It reminds you of why we're here, why we do what we do.
Yes.
It reminds you of how great the people are in this industry, from the ones who've been around forever,
Yes.
the dinosaurs like me, and then the new people coming in. It celebrates the great work on our continent and in the Middle East. And we're the largest awards show in Africa and the Middle East. And I think it's always a super caliber of work. It's a super kind of clashing of great minds, creative minds. The energy around Loeries is always fantastic. Unless you're talking about Saturday morning after the party, then it's a bit flat. But I always feel like it's a chance to sort of reset, to remind yourself what's working out there, what's great, and to feel inspired again, and really to give yourself a rejuvenation in terms of creative inspiration.
All right, cool. And seeing as you're coming from the judging process and we're about to head into the award shows imminently, what are you looking forward to, actually?
I'm particularly, I love, those in advertising will relate to this. When you go to the movies, you go to watch the ads first. You're never late. A lot of people don't watch TV anymore. So, I'm looking forward to just seeing the work. It's a chance to really get like a full understanding of the work across the categories. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing what wins in all the different categories. And to just have that chance to celebrate. We've been through a couple of tough years as an industry, and we need this. This is our time.
Definitely. And in the past year, any work that you feel has stood out for you that has captured your heart quite recently?
Quite recently. Oh gosh, my memory is not that good. When you ask me that question, I'm only thinking of the work from this year. But
that's perfectly fine.
There's some work this year that I've seen that I really think is absolutely special. There's a piece of work done for PPS called The Forgotten Graduates.
Yes.
It is an astounding piece of work. It's phenomenal in how they've delved into history, the amount of research that they've done into it. And it's a very important story because it goes back to tell the story of the first South African graduate. It's relevant to the brand PPS because that is a financial company that focuses on graduates. And what they did is they found the first graduate, I think his name's Anderson Soga, and they calculated what would his sort of like investment be all this time down the line in 2023, and they used that sum of money to fund scholarships or bursaries for new students.
That sounds so phenomenal.
So it's a historical piece. It's beautifully crafted. It's a great body of work, and I'm just picking out one. There are lots of great pieces of work. I
can imagine, and I mean, maybe we'll just see more and more of it at the actual award show.
Yeah.
So, I mean, thank you for giving us your time. Thank you for your insights. And thank you for sharing your passion with us.
No problem
at all. We hope to speak to you soon again and find out more about the future our industry has.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Kabelo Moshapalo is Chief Creative Officer at Ogilvy, South Africa. His work has been awarded at shows across South Africa and the world, and he has been a jury member at numerous award shows, both locally and internationally. He is a digital specialist and has extensive experience creating effective digital executions. So, we asked him what people are getting wrong in the digital space. We also wanted to know how he sees AI tools playing a role in creative work in future. Hi, Kabelo.
How you doing?
I'm good, and how are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me.
No, it's a pleasure, and thank you for taking your time out to sit down with us and have a candid discussion, we could say.
I love candid.
All right.
We can work with that.
Well, let's start with, the news of Abaz, which is you were a judge at Cannes Lion this year. That's super cool. What were the biggest highlights for you?
For Cannes, I think it was my first time doing Cannes, but also it was like a milestone for them, as in 75 years of Cannes Awards, Cannes International Festival of Creativity Awards.
Yes.
So big thing, and I had also the honor and privilege of being on film, which is actually what started the actual awards itself. Like the first category was like film.
Yes.
So the biggest honor for me was and a highlight is obviously that film is the biggest medium with the most amount of spend and most amount of brand presence that's created to build brand equity. So biggest show on the Friday night. It's what actually becomes showcased, and it's the biggest thing.
Well, I think we can say Cannes is obviously the Oscars of our industry, right? So how did the experience of being a judge at Cannes compare to other award shows you've judged?
So, I mean, when it comes to different award shows, it's not a cut and dry comparison, you know?
Yeah.
I think obviously Cannes being a global show, Loeries being a regional show, and then you have other ones that have done like a Directors Club, which is in New York, but also quite global, but a little bit of a focus from London and the USA, obviously.
Yes.
And I think it's all different categories as well that play a role and factor in terms of what you look for from what actually is the benchmark for creative excellence. And you know, with Loeries, there's also like effectiveness or innovation that gets looked at. I mean, the impact, not really effectiveness. I think it's more the impact. So how awesome the creative product is, but actually resulting in something that's measurable and tangible for business reasons. So I think for me, that's how I'd measure it up. And
Yeah.
you call it the Oscars, I call it the Olympic Games of creativity.
Okay. All right. I think I like that. The Olympic Games of Creativity. All right. Maybe they should look into rebranding the awards and call the 76th one the Olympics of Creativity. So what did you learn from the experience that you could bring home, apply to your own work here in South Africa to make it even better?
A lot of learning. I think, you know, when I do judging, like even with this judging we just did now for the Loeries Awards,
Yes.
45 years of the Loeries Awards, a lot of learning because we've come a long way. And, you know, when it started, it didn't incorporate the rest of the continent going into, excuse me, going into the Middle East and, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So always amazing to see how different markets handle same challenges that we have, same similar brands and brand profiles that are multinationals trying to land and be in different markets, but resonate with the context of whatever that audience is. So a lot of learning in how to tap into real insights that actually are relevant from a cultural perspective and how people then connect with those brands. And it's always different. And
Yes.
that's always my learning for me. This cultural context, like the most important thing, because it's highly nuanced and like there's a lot to learn and there's a lot to, because I also like people watching and the way people behave and how people behave, turning that into something that you can use to sell a product. I mean, that's like not a brain wave, but it's a seamless thing because then they will like it because it's in the behavior, it's in the way they do things, the way that they consume, you know, media or they consume products. And if you tap into that insight, that's a beautiful thing. That's the sweet spot that I always try to find.
I love that. I really love that. And I mean, digital is your jam, right? So what are the biggest mistakes you see people making with digital creative executions?
Lots of mistakes because digital is fast paced, always moving, always growing, always changing. And the biggest mistake is to take it for granted.
Wow.
And
Okay.
taking it for granted means it's an afterthought. It's not upfront. It's not considered as a key driver for whatever you're doing.
Yes.
So, then the results are going to be second best because it's second thought. So if you go in intentionally knowing that this is modern marketing, you know, you have to use all the different aspects of communication channels and landscape to get your product out there and be in front of the audience at the right place at the right time with the right message, you know, and digital allows you to do that more than other channels, right? So I think people don't really fully actualize that power of doing that.
And on the polar side of the spectrum of this question, what are some of the key practices for getting it right?
Some of the key practices for getting it right, I think the first one I already mentioned is gotta be upfront, intentional about.
Yeah.
People actually on social media, on social channels, or people actually use mobile phones more than they use desktops, and that's how you're gonna, hit the lowest common denominator, which is most of people. So start there.
Yeah.
So there'll be like the first point, right?
Yes.
To really understand like how people actually use digital channels, right?
Yeah.
Start there. Then secondly, it's you can't. It has to be fit for purpose. So you can't just like take something that's like a radio spot and then put on digital. You know what I mean? It has to be
Yeah.
fit for purpose. It's like, okay, how do I take this idea or this thinking and adapt it to the way that this channel works, moves, and people connect with? So that would be for me the key ingredients of getting it right.
No, this all makes sense. And I mean, seeing as we going down the path of digital and you saying being, it's ever changing and all of that, I'm actually curious to know, how much have you been playing around with AI tools?
Play around a lot with some AI tools. For me, it's an opportunity. It's a big opportunity.
Yeah.
So what I have found, which is quite helpful, is a lot of things in rewriting stuff and making sure that like the basics are the not just the basics, but like the actual kind of impact I'm trying to create with what I'm saying comes across in the best way possible.
Yeah.
So I've maximized on using that. So I do have ChatGTP, and I have other ones that that look a little bit more into I just don't remember the name of it, but it looks and works more around local nuances. So it actually uses where ChatGTP like looks globally in terms of what data inputs it has. This one is actually a little bit more fine-tuned because it looks like, okay, in South Africa, this and that, and those are the data points that it uses. So the context is a little bit more different. Yeah. So that's what I've been playing with.
And how much do you see yourself using these tools in the future, though?
A lot. There's a creative. I think it helps unleash that creative sense checking of ideas, creative, scope of where the idea can go. It was funny working on this one pitch that one time. And we just basically put in what the brief was with some couple of prompts.
Yeah.
And then the result that came out was like not actually far from where the team was going with the thinking. Yeah. So I was like, oh, that's dope. And obviously because what makes it ours and makes it richer is that out of what it came out of as the results, there were things that we were better at because we're using our superpower.
Yes.
We're using what is the South African conclusion or most South African expression of this idea, and it can't do that. It can't perform that. So that's why I feel like it will never replace us, but it's always a great fuel of driving some of the creative thinking and getting some inspiration and some thoughts out, and getting some of those first base ideas out, because you got to do that. You got to get those first base ideas out so you can go deeper and go and flex with the better stuff. You know what I mean?
All right. But on a lighter note now, I mean, you have a brother in this industry as well. What was it like in your house growing up with two ultra creative brothers under one roof? And what do you guys talk about around the braai when the family gets together?
We definitely don't talk about advertising.
Funny enough,
talented, I think creativity, I don't know. I think we hit the lottery and got to, channel our energies into this thing. I think to a lot of success in terms of where we ended up and what we're currently doing and, living the advertising dream in a manner of speaking.
Yeah.
In terms of doing great work, working for big, big agencies and that kind of thing. And I think, loving to wake up and do what we do.
Yeah.
I think
We take that for granted
you
sometimes.
can't take that for granted. I think that the passion is there. And like we'll talk about, we never talk shop really. I think we talk about the dogs we have, family stuff, but
Yeah.
and I think also we talk music. I think, and it's like, I think it's nice to have that break from, talking shop all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we do like, connect on, advice on this, or I was thinking that I'm working on this and my challenge is that, and it's great to have a sounding board that someone who understands,
Yeah.
the world that comes from,
All right. No, that sounds fantastic. And I mean, we're down here now for the 45th Loeries Awards. What's something when you look back is a fond memory for you for the Loeries, and what's something that when you look forward, you're actually looking forward to, especially within this creative week?
Lots. And even just during this week, we've been talking about a lot of fond memories of like where the Loeries started, and people's first experience of Loeries. Like my first experience of Loeries was Sun City.
Yes, yes.
And crazy enough, being in that space, seeing what this is, and growth into, walking up on that stage and those kind of things are like
Getting
really
your first bird.
yeah. I mean, and then fighting to get the next one and the next one and the next one. So those are fun memories of like where it started and where it's going. Essentially, is again, being a regional show, it is quite important to, it's the training ground for South Africa to say, okay, we're up against the rest of the continent and the Middle East, and let the best work win, and the best work, and it's not coincidental that that best work shines on the world stage. So I think that's what to look forward to, going into the future, more and more things that package what we have here and beautiful stories that still need to be told around South Africa and the Middle East that the world is actually yearning for. So I think that's the opportunity going into the future of those stories hitting the world stage, winning big, and it starts from here.
Wow, that's a mouthful, and I totally agree with you in terms of the future. I may not share the fond memories as far back as Sun City. Some people can only go as far back as Durban. My first Loeries was actually last year, starting in Cape Town. But I'm quite excited for the future, and I think, we have a bright future in South Africa. And also, I just want to take the time to thank you for taking this time to part wisdom with us. But I also want to offer you the opportunity to leave us with any parting words, parting wisdom that you feel you need to say on this platform.
Wow. I don't know if I can follow up from what I just said with the last thing, because there was my footnote mic drop.
Yeah.
But I think, I love creativity, and I love the game. So you gotta be in it to win it, and going forward with the show and everything else, I think, a lot of things can be said, and but what you can't deny is the energy that the Loeries are. It's like a premier event that brings together the best of the best in the industry, and the work that the best and the best have to deliver. So looking forward to an amazing show again, and and let the best work win.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's speak again soon.
Sweet.
That was another sensational episode of Birdwatching at the Loeries in partnership with VMLY&R South Africa and Bizcommunity. See you on the next one.